Republican out of Florida, member of Ways and Means, House Select Committee on Intelligence. Welcome back to the show, Congressman. When I say drama,
thanks for having me.
You know, I'm alluding to the fact that the Republicans have a plan on health care that doesn't include extending the Obamacare subsidies. The Democrats have a plan that does. They got four Republicans, the Dems, to come along with them today and try to force a vote on their plan. What would you say about that to the four Republicans who were who were going with the Democrats on this health care issue?
Well, the ones that were here 2 years ago voted against the extension of the COVID-era Obamacare subsidies 2 years ago. So that would be Lawler and Fitzpatrick. So it's interesting, the reversal in a short period of time, because they're getting political pressure on an issue that 7% of Americans use the Obama ACA tax credits. This isn't something that affects every American. I don't know what the breakdown is for their district, but they're using the discharge process, which will take a couple of weeks. So it won't be by the end of this year that we'll be voting on it. It'll likely be early next year. It'll take it a couple weeks to discharge the actual petition.
A lot of Pennsylvania there, along with Lawler from New York.
Right.
Different politics in different districts, to your point. Let me give you a quote from Fitzpatrick. You brought up what he said. The congressman from Pennsylvania, as I've stated many times before, the only policy that's worse than a clean 3-year extension without any reforms is a policy of complete expiration without any bridge. Unfortunately, it's House leadership themselves that have forced this outcome. You disagree with that? How would you respond to that kind of, that logic?
Yeah, I disagree with it completely. I don't think that's something that we should do. It was put in place by the Democrats temporarily. Fitzpatrick voted against it 2 years ago. So if it's temporary in nature during COVID, why are we going to extend something that only goes to 7% of Americans that is rampant with fraud? The premiums just for these ACA tax credits have gone up by 50% since 2014. So this is not something that is a good thing for Americans. It's not good health care policy.
Right.
This money goes directly to insurance companies, which I have a plan that would allow those monies to go to Americans in HSAs to be able to decide for themselves how they want to use that money for their health care.
Even if all of that's true, isn't there a political price in the near term that might be paid by Republicans as these subsidies expire? If they do, I mean, people's costs go up a lot as a result, whatever the long-term solution should be. And, how do you square that?
Well, again, it's 7% of the American population, so I don't know exactly what that breakdown is for them, but I don't believe this is a determinant in November. It's interesting, these same group of lawmakers, Fitzpatrick and Lawler, who are doing this now and reversing the votes they had 2 years ago, are the same ones that said—
Do you disagree with these numbers, by the way, that were on the screen? Can we bring those back up real quick from the Center for American Progress on your state, on Florida, that there's 1.5 million people at risk of losing coverage if they expire? Is that not— because you're saying it's fewer people? Is that what you're arguing?
It's 7% of the American population, so I can't read the exact 1.5 million Floridians that will be affected. So that's— I don't know what the numbers are that break down. There's like 22 million people in the state of Florida. We have other solutions. I have a solution that a bill that the president actually talked about. I sit on the Ways and Means Committee. We've talked about a lot of these different solutions. For whatever reason, there's some of them we're going to vote on this week, not the HSA bill, which I think we should put forward. And these are the type of solutions that will help lower the cost of health care to the American people. These ACA tax credits have seen a doubling of premiums since 2014, which I don't think is a good thing. And this money goes directly to insurance companies. This is not going to the American people.
Just from a practical perspective, as I understand it for our audience, this is likely going nowhere in the Senate, no matter what happens tonight in the House.
Well, and that's the political reality of all this.
Right.
So maybe Fitzpatrick and Lawler feel they need to do this politically for cover in the midterms as we get to that. But as you said, the Senate's not going to take this up. They had votes last week in the Senate. You had Republicans on one side of that, Democrats on the other side of that. Now, there is a lot of discussions with moderates in the chamber about kind of threading the needle. They signed on to a 3-year extension. There's more moderates that have talked about a 1-year extension with reforms, like those specific reforms on income caps and to ensure that we go after the fraud so that people that actually need it are getting it, and we're not spending a bunch of money on fraud, waste, and abuse within the system.
Okay, I wanted to leave time to talk about Venezuela. The president, with this blockade of the sanctioned oil tankers, is certainly top of mind, top of the news today. Chris Cuomo last night on these issues had Senator Fetterman, speaking of Pennsylvania, on his program on this network, talking about the boat strikes and more. And here's part of what Senator Fetterman said to Chris.
This idea, some things out in the media, it's kind of putting out this that the military is just picking off, any boat that comes across. That's just not true. I mean, there's extensive intelligence, and they know exactly who's on that boat, and they know what's actually on that boat right now. They're not just going around randomly just shooting boats and those things. That's just not the fact.
All right. Anything you'd add to that, Congressman Stubbe, and then about the overall operations as you see things?
Yeah, I mean, he's accurate on that. And when Hegseth and Marco and the Joint Chiefs of Staff briefed the members of Congress this week, they specifically went through the targeting process and how there's multiple different levels, both a legal analysis and a targeting analysis and an intel analysis to know that these are members of a designated terrorist organization, that they are transporting drugs and cocaine, and they go through all this legal analysis. This is not something willy-nilly that people are just shooting at these different the boats in the Caribbean. So he's right as that relates to that. From a legal perspective, I believe the president has authority to do what he's doing. You can question the politics of it, but 800,000 Americans have died from fentanyl overdoses and drug overdoses since 2014. And so that is a scourge on America, and we know where it's coming from. We see where it's coming from. We have great intel on all these boats that are coming out with all these drugs that are killing the American people.
Now, what about on the blockade itself of the oil tankers, the sanctioned oil tankers? I want to be careful to say it's not a full blockade. I think that would be an act of war if there was a full blockade. It's a blockade, the president says, of sanctioned oil tankers. He did when he was, we caught it live about an hour ago or so. He was getting off the plane. He was talking about something to the effect of, they took our oil. We want it back, and oil permits. Best we could guess was maybe he was referring to the permits back in the Chavez days in Venezuela. Do you know what the president may have been referring to there and what the goal of this really is in the big picture?
Well, I don't know specifically what he was referring to, but these different sanctioned vessels and sanctioned oil are sanctioned by the United States government. The last one that was seized and boarded, the president said was on its way to Iran. We have sanctions as it relates to that as well. And so they are operating illegally in international waters. And again, the president has authority to seize those vessels. He has the authority to blockade those vessels and prevent the sale of sanctioned oil and the transport of sanctioned oil in international waters.
Of course, he has an address to the nation tonight. We'll see if we hear any more about this. I expect to hear a lot about the economy.
I would expect he's going to talk about that tonight.
About Venezuela.
I think he wants to also talk about the wins for this year towards the end of the year.
Congressman Stubbe, good to have you on the show again. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, good to see you.
All right, NewsNation Politics.